Swimming like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank. We come to you virtually from Seattle and the Pacific Northwest. If you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, this right here is the podcast for you. We think this is where street smarts and book smarts collide. Hello again, everybody. I'm Dan Whedon, and my co-host today is the intrepid Michelle Baumberger. Our guest for today, we're very excited to have Jenifer Lambert from TERRA Staffing Services. Jenifer started in the staffing industry while still in college, and what was meant to be a short-term stint to help out the family business sparked a passion for this industry that has led to a multi-decades career touching virtually every aspect of the business. She focuses today on ensuring that the company hits its revenue targets through effective talent generation and deployment, sales programs, and marketing initiatives necessary to spread the TERRA message far and wide. And of course, she's doing that now because she's on the Shrimp Tank podcast. Welcome, Jenifer. We'll be with you in just a couple of minutes. Listen, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts: iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube. Michelle, we are what?
Ubiquitous.
We are ubiquitous. We are coming to you from more and more cities all the time. We've actually just picked up Dallas and New York and Columbus and Knoxville to go along with the mothership in Atlanta and several other places. Now, listen, before we bring on Jenifer, hello there, Michelle. Good to see you again.
Hey, Dan. Good to see you too. I'm happy to see the sun shining today after a little bit of strange weather.
Sunshine. The sun may be out. It could be bright, but it's cold. I was going to go running this morning, but it said 25 degrees. And so being the wimp that I am, I jumped on the indoor cycle. It has been cold here, hasn't it?
Yeah, and this is the week where most of Seattle takes their exodus to warm and sunny places. My Facebook feed is full of pictures of Hawaii and Mexico and Scottsdale. So I'm happy to be heading out to Tampa tomorrow morning.
Okay. Well, the only place I'm going is my basement, which is my studio, and I have to keep this thing like heated up nonstop. So yes, we've been shivering here. We'll have a great trip to Tampa. That'll be a lot of fun. You know what else is going to be fun, Michelle, is we've got your friend and my new friend Jenifer Lambert on, and we're excited to be talking with her.
I'm excited to be here.
Well, Jenifer, thank you for being here. And we got to just ask you, Michelle and I talking about being cold as I'm rubbing my hands together. But you know what else seems to have been cold? Every client I talk to, doesn't matter the industry, doesn't matter the size, they're saying, I can't find staffing. I can't find people. I'm having to work behind the counter. I'm having to do all this stuff because I don't know where they all went to. This is, I guess, an early hot or cold. This is your business. Is staffing cold?
Staffing's hot. Your cold is my hot. You're in the Pacific Northwest today, freezing. I'm down in Scottsdale, Arizona today, traveling, visiting our office down here, and they're all freezing. I think it's glorious. It's like 60 degrees. I'm sleeveless. They're all in sweaters. So, I mean, it all depends on what side of the table you're on any topic, including talent. It is a hot market right now. And there are many opportunities that abound for talent. I certainly, though, am appreciative of how hard it is for employers who are looking for talent right now. It's incredibly competitive.
Yeah, so you guys are in this day in and day out, and I can kind of relate to Dan. I talk to a lot of business owners, and talent is absolutely the number one thing that folks are struggling with. So what are the trends you're seeing? Because you're talking both employers and employees.
Yeah, the trend is interesting. So we're seeing coming out of COVID a record number of new jobs that were created. There was a lot of pent up demand, suppressed demand during the depth of COVID, I should say. Right, COVID's a two-year experience and journey that we've all been on, but during the deepest parts of COVID, the scariest times of COVID, I guess, There was a lot of uncertainty. There was pent up demand. There's now a lot more personal income that's come into the market. People can travel again. They're spending money again. There is a high demand for goods and services, and there is not enough people to keep up with that demand. So we saw workforce participation rates that declined during COVID, and they've stayed low, decades level low. That's starting to come back up a little bit, but it's not keeping up with the demand. I just saw some data from a labor economist that showed, for example, in manufacturing, which is an area we do a lot of work in, that there is 0.52, so half of an unemployed person for every single job opening in that sector. So do you want the top half or you want the bottom half, right? Like there's not enough people for all the jobs that are available in the market right now. That's the short answer.
So if my clients who are listening, I hope they're listening, maybe they're listening. If they were listening now, I don't know that they would go, oh no, that doesn't sound good. Is there any hope? Maybe I just say in the near future, and let's just say in 2022, do you think there is going to be any more of a surge coming up? And one of the areas I guess that I'll tag on to that is, it seems like it also hits kind of that the entry level as well. People who might be working counters, stocking shelves, that, used to be kids in high school getting that seems to also be down. Is there any hope for 2022?
When you say hope for 2022, you mean for talent supply, right?
Yes.
People being available to work those jobs.
Yes.
The best forecast I've seen is that workforce participation rate is going to come up a little bit. So there may be a little bit of improvement there, but it's still going to be highly competitive. I would tell you that once upon a time, our clients told us their highest demand jobs were, these super technical, highly specialized, skilled positions. Now it's people who are packing boxes in a warehouse, people who are answering phones in a call center. Whoops, my light just kicked off in here. I need to move around more. It is a universal problem. There's still opportunities to win. It's not an unsolvable dilemma, but it's going to require employers to be more creative and think differently and think outside the box as far as how they're going to attract talent. They're going to have to think about attracting talent in the same way that they think about attracting customers, and really beginning to think about the job seeker as its own customer base of sorts.
Yeah, that was actually part of the question I was thinking about next was, is there a gap between the way employers are looking at the marketplace and the way that talent is looking at the marketplace? Has that shifted?
Yeah, 100%. The thing that I hear is, I sense some anger from employers who think that they'll make broad generalizations like there's no work ethic, no one wants to work anymore, and that's just not true. People are working; they're working in record numbers. But the question is, do they want to work for you? And so I was talking with an employer yesterday who said, well, if somebody wants to work here, they're going to have to do the following things. And I said, I'm going to have to stop you right there. The first part of your sentence is a big if. Like, if they want to work here, they may or may not want to work here. And especially when this was a manufacturing company located in the heart of an area where there's a lot of other jobs just like it on the same street or one block over. And every one of those companies has a now hiring sign in front of the building. And so this idea that somebody's going to have to jump through hoops, or they're going to have to suffer through some gauntlet in order to get a job, if they have to do that to work for you, they're not going to do it. They're going to go where it's easier, or they're going to go where there's a more attractive value proposition. And the number one value proposition, especially at the lower wage levels and lower skill levels, is pay. That's the biggest driver right now.
Jenifer, you just took me back 30-ish years to that, because I entered the workplace out of college in a very much, and it kind of is that like almost like old command and control type of theory is, you're going to work here, you're going to do it our way, you're going to like it, whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
That is, and I've talked to clients, that is so far gone. But the question I really wanted to ask you is about virtual workers. So for example, our daughter recently changed jobs, and she's now working 100% virtually from home. And of course she has two small children, and it's going to work out really well, but she now no longer has a 30 or 40-minute drive each way and all of that. Talk a little bit about coming out of the pandemic. The virtual workforce has not stopped chugging along. It's moving, I think, at record speed. Talk a little bit about where you see that going.
Yeah, expectations have shifted around that dramatically. Companies, there's some subset of companies that have had virtual environments for a long time. Global companies where they have global teams. Somebody's in Ireland, somebody's in India, somebody's in the US. They're used to working that way. But for a lot of companies, this was the first time that they had ever experimented with everybody working from home. And what they found out is it worked. Not for every company and not universally, but in general, it worked. And the longer people were home, the longer they adjusted and adapted their lifestyle to making that work for them too. And so now you have this situation where employers are, in some cases, wanting to bring people back into the workplace who haven't been making a commute. They haven't been putting on pants for the last 2 years. And now this is a big shift. And they're having to answer the question, why? What is special or different about me showing up in a workplace? And I think that's the number one piece of advice that I'm giving to our clients right now who are struggling with this. And that is, it has to be special. If we used to joke pre-pandemic about, oh, another meeting that could have been an email. Well, that's sort of being applied to the whole workplace. Like, oh, another commute that could have been me working from my kitchen table. And so what is it that I get different? What is it that feels special or better or makes my life better as an employee by showing up to an office? So I think you're seeing a lot more hybrid situations, but I think employers really have to think about what is going to be different or special or better about being physically gathered in the same space. I think there are things that got lost. I think culture was impacted by this remote situation. I think youngest employees have suffered most in terms of mentorship. I was talking with a young man who did an internship right out of college during the pandemic, and he doesn't feel like he gained the sort of network or the experience that you would typically get from an internship. So I think for those of us who have established networks, we have a clear work history that sort of speaks for itself. Maybe we've done better working remotely, but it's not affecting everybody in the same way, and it's not helpful to everybody. So, navigating all of those, I think it's really just brought a lot of these issues just open on the table, and when we have to discuss it and we have to figure our way out through this.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, we've seen that just in hiring and in looking at talent and retaining talent, and how do we kind of keep that community together and growing. Yep. And helping to build people. I do think,
sorry, real quickly, I do think that's part of why we're seeing this great resignation as well, because when you're from home, it doesn't feel different necessarily. The work becomes very much the work. And so, for example, I was talking with a colleague of mine, and they've had terrible turnover. It's a company that is based in Portland. They had a really special culture. I had visited them multiple times. You could feel it when you walk through the door. Just a real collegial feel. Everything about their physical space spoke to their culture. And now they're all completely work from home. And they've lost a lot of that culture. And so when you've lost the culture, you've lost what feels special about that company. Now that job that you're doing could really be done for any company. I can still wear my sweatpants and sit at my dining room table and do this job for somebody else, but make more money or have a different benefit package or right. And so the details, some of those economic factors of a job become more important when culture is lacking. And so I think that's part of why we've seen mass exodus from companies.
Yeah. That kind of takes me to the question I was going to ask next. So Dan mentioned in the introduction that your role at TERRA began as a kind of short-term stint helping the family business.
Yeah.
And it's turned into your career. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So my mother started this company in the early 80s, and I had never intended to work in the family business. I used to tell her, just so you know, I'm never going to work for you. And she would respond, that's good, because I never asked you to. It wasn't like this was some booming, thriving business. It was about a seven maximum, maybe 10-person operation, one office. And so I was headed off to college to pursue, quote unquote, bigger and better things. And coming out of school one summer, one of those 7 employees was going on maternity leave. I wasn't sure what I was going to do for the summer. And so my mother said, hey, why don't you just fill in for the summer and you can cover this person's responsibility. She'll be back in 3 months and then you can go on to your bigger, better things. And at the end of 3 months, this employee decided to stay home with her baby. And I was excited because in those 3 months, I'd absolutely fallen in love with the business. So my plan had been to go into journalism. And what I discovered was that I got to know a lot about a lot of companies behind the scenes. I got to know people's stories and what their hopes and dreams were for their future, and have some small part in helping them orchestrate the next chapter. And it just completely intoxicated me. That and the thrill of cashing commission checks at a young age. All of those things combined, and I've never left. So today, my husband and I own the business. My mother is retired. My father passed away about 18 months ago. And so we're running the business, and our vision for growth. We were both very young and ambitious when we got involved in the business. And we said, if it's going to captivate our imagination, it has to grow. And so here we are today, 15, almost 16 branch offices across 4 states, getting ready to open 2 new offices in June in Dallas, Texas, which will be our first foray into that market. So it's been a great journey, a great temp gig, I would say.
You know, that's a great story. And Michelle, this is the second of our guests that we've had in a row that started out on like a month-to-month basis, and then it lasted decades. And that's what a great story. Thanks for sharing that. Well,
Absolutely.
I can't believe it. We've actually hit the point for our first commercial. So we are going to take a short break to hear from today's spotlight sponsor. And when we come back with our guest, Jenifer Lambert, for a Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to talk about people skills and technical skills. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank.
Your business is your valuable achievement, your livelihood, and your legacy. Every day, you are asked to balance business opportunities and legal risks, but engaging legal adds complexity and expense. You deserve to experience business law the way it should be: practical, responsive, approachable, and transparent legal solutions to support your business in every stage. With Equinox Business Law Group's General Counsel Services, you get a corporate legal department tailored to your business needs. Let us tackle those contracts, HR, partnerships, and IP issues so you can get back to your most important work, seamlessly moving your business forward. To learn more about Equinox fixed cost, all-inclusive legal services, visit our website at equinox.law or email contact@equinoxbusinesslaw.com. Equinox Business Law Group, business law the way it should be.
Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound and beyond. I'm Michelle Bomberger here with Dan Wheaton, and our guest today is Jenifer Lambert of TERRA Staffing. Now we're going to move on to our next segment, Hot or Not.
And today is like not in the Pacific Northwest, but it is hot, or at least way warmer where you are today, Jenifer. So, but what Hot or Not does is Michelle and I are going to pepper you with questions about business, about life, about staffing, about a whole bunch of things. You're going to tell us whether it's hot or not and why or why not. And at the end, you win absolutely nothing, but let's hope you have some fun along the way. You heard me mention a little bit about people and technical skills. Now we know that people skills is important and technical skills are important, but which one is hotter, people skills or technical skills?
People skills, all the way people skills. I was just talking with our team in one of our Phoenix locations yesterday about this, that they are seeing overwhelmingly that our clients are asking more and more for people who are going to be a good fit to their organization, people who can play well with others, people who can learn, who are willing to take on new tasks. It's all about what we used to call soft skills. We're now calling them foundational skills. Soft is to underplay the value and the importance of those skills, and especially considering how fast technology is changing and how fast processes in business are changing. What technical skills you walk in the door with today will be irrelevant or outdated pretty quickly. So those foundational people skills, hot.
Michelle, do you mind if I want to ask a quick follow-up question on that? It's interesting because I often hear people say of an old, let's just say of a more mature veteran generation, all those kids today, they're spending so much time in front of their phone or on their Xbox. They just don't have people skills. The interesting thing is, I remember people saying that about us when we were growing up in the 80s and such. And I don't know if that's a generally true statement. So let me ask you this way, based on what you said, is the younger generation getting the same type of opportunities for people skills? And is this not about technology, but rather how people learn?
You know, there's always been a youngest generation in the workplace. I used to be part of that generation. So did the two of you.
Right.
And I'm a little bitter that I'm no longer the youngest generation. I'm now the person who's saying those kids, right? And so, you know, those kids are PS our kids, the ones we raised. And they're also your workforce, your customers, your everything. And so the better we can figure out how to just adapt to accommodate and to connect with people who may be coming from a different worldview, a different perspective or background, the better. So what I'm seeing, particularly with this youngest workforce, they love to connect. They absolutely love to connect. They had hyper involved parents as a generalization, and these are all gross generalizations, obviously, but which is part of the problem. But they're used to having a high level of connection and a high level of engagement from the quote unquote grown-ups. And so I found one of my favorite parts about this generation is you can't micromanage them. They don't experience it as micromanagement. They love involved management. They love to have their work made visible. They love feedback. They love to feel like they're being developed and invested in. The change I've seen communication wise is that they did grow up with different communication channels than I did. And so we have to teach them things like, okay, don't send that in an email. Pick up the phone and have a conversation. Just dealt with this yesterday. Delivering bad news to a customer, should have picked up the phone, should have talked through it. There was too much nuance in the conversation to be just putting it into email. Came across like a lead balloon to the customer. You know, I had to do some damage control on the other side of that. But that's the biggest change or difference I've seen, is just helping them see that it is appropriate sometimes to just have a conversation. Not everything can be in text or email, but they're super agreeable to learning it. It's just a different channel than they've used.
I was going to mention text as well. You know, there's this tendency toward casualness, and I think in the workplace, we grew up in a place that was much more formal in the workplace.
Oh, yeah.
And so balancing what the customer expects versus what folks our age expect versus what the young people expect is kind of a different dynamic.
Absolutely.
So another area, as people are looking for talent, seeking talent kind of anywhere, overseas staffing, hot or not?
Medium. There was a lot more overseas staffing, I think, pre-pandemic that I was seeing. What we saw though was supply chain disruptions of all sorts and kinds, and there's some risk to offshoring or outsourcing offshore. I'm seeing some of it starting to come back a bit. But you know, again, I think the opportunity to grow your culture and to have more people, and when I say culture, I mean what I feel really versus outsourcing, important tasks and functions. I would think through very carefully what you outsource. For our company, for example, we have about 2,600 to 3,000 contract employees who work for us every single week, and getting their payroll on time and accurate is an absolutely core and vital function to our business. And we're approaching nonstop about offshoring that or outsourcing it. I wouldn't do it, just because it's so important to me to maintain control of that, and for the people who are involved in that to understand the absolute importance that has for the people that we're serving, that we're putting to work. Could that translate, to outsourcing? Probably, but I'd rather keep that in-house and make sure that it's a core competency of ours. But there's other things we do outsource, like we outsource legal counsel to you, Michelle. And we don't need to have an in-house core competency around that. But I think the trick here is being clear about what you need to own and what you absolutely are willing to wrap your arms around and stake your claim in, and where does it make sense to bring in outside expertise. I feel like I wandered way away from the offshoring conversation there, but
I think these are all options, right? As people start to figure out, what do we need to have in-house because we want to control it, as you mentioned. What are the things that we want some control over, so we want it close by maybe, and what are the things that are really easy to kind of step out of? For instance, we're using someone overseas who's doing a lot of our data entry and our reporting and that kind of stuff. And it works nicely because when we have a time difference benefit, and they've got the right talent to be able to do that. But, you know, there are certain things that you want to keep close and you want to keep control over. So it makes perfect sense.
And that is the big takeaway, that there are many different options. And that needs to be part of your staffing strategy, is figuring out what are all the different ways the work could get done and what's the right way to do it.
I think what I heard you say is get the best expertise, get the best information, regardless of where their feet are. You know, there's never been a greater time than to be able to do that. So, you know,
the phrase for this is called, there's a way of thinking about this called buy, borrow, build, right? When it comes to talent, are you going to buy that expertise, bring it in-house? Are you going to borrow it on a fractional basis? Engaging someone like Michelle is a perfect example. We engage her for general counsel work, or are you going to build it? Are you going to take that raw talent that with the great people skills that we talked about and teach them and build them from the ground up? And we actually have a link on our website. If anybody's interested in checking that out, we have an assessment tool that it takes you through a series of questions to help you think through which of those strategies makes the most sense for the job that you're trying to fill. So
I love that. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, no,
happy to share that link.
Yep. It's on your website, which is
TERRAStaffingGroup.com. TERRA staffing-group.com.
Yeah, I know Michelle will ask you that later on today, but we might as well get that in while you're talking about it. You know, Jenifer, my dad had 2 jobs in his life. He was 30 years in the Navy and then nearly another 20 years working for the school district. And I remember growing up, you got to stay at the job, you know, there's longevity and there's all of that. You don't want to, and then all of a sudden we started hearing, well, people are going to change jobs 7 times in a career. And I'm just wondering now, with hybrid, with virtual, with how we've changed, is it hot or not to be looking to change maybe every couple of years to keep up to pace with the money that you can make? Is that a hot concept?
It is a hot concept. And I hate saying that as an employer, but it is a hot concept. And there is data around job stayers and job changers and their wage growth. There is really just about no penalty at this point to changing jobs. We see it with the employers we work with. Once upon a time, they'd say, I don't want to see anybody who's had more than 2 or 3 jobs in the last 5 years. That's not even a consideration anymore. It's more about, why did you change? And on what terms did you leave, right? Did you leave well? Those are the things that they care about the most. But we're seeing people who are changing jobs annually, and it does not serve as any sort of an impediment to them getting their next position. And again, the data shows that they experience faster wage growth than people who stay. And so I think that's an opportunity for employers to think about as they are looking at their wage plans, their salary administration. Are you keeping up with the market? And would your employee that you really value today be better off going out on the open market and competing? We recently had a conversation with a customer who, he was sad because he was losing a long-term employee who was leaving for a $25,000 pay increase. And they were sad to see him go. And our recruiter, I was actually really proud of her. She said that she told the go more to stay if you really want him, because when you factor in, one, our fee, but also what it's going to cost you to hire his replacement on the open market, it was going to end up costing him more than $25,000, probably all fed, to hire a stranger, essentially. So if this is an employee you value and you'd like to keep, make him the offer to stay. So that's exactly what he did.
That's great advice. I love that. Because the cost, that's probably not something that employers at the top of mind think about. They don't factor that in.
Yeah. That's a question you should be asking yourself when you're administering a pay plan, is what would it cost me to replace this person? And it's going to probably be more than that 3% budgeted increase that every company seems to roll out every year. It really, in this market especially, would behoove you to be regularly looking at your pay bands and your salary plan and make sure that you're keeping up with the market. And then communicate to your employees that you are doing that you are testing your plan against the market, that you want to be competitive and current with the market. They don't need to start looking for a new job in order to test their salary. You're going to test it on their behalf to make sure it's competitive.
And I think that there's a challenge here for smaller companies as well, right? Because we tend to be at a disadvantage from a financial capability standpoint. You look at software engineers, for example, right? A lot of smaller software companies can't compete with what, Amazon, Microsoft, some of the larger companies are willing to pay. So going back to your comment earlier about culture, is trying to build an environment that says something different, right? That if you're going to go work at, one of these really large companies, the environment is going to include X, Y, and Z, and probably a lot of work. Can I, as a smaller company, maybe offer, compelling opportunity from a culture standpoint, and maybe less work for less money, because I can't compete at that level. And so it really puts people in a bind, I think, in the smaller companies to be able to position themselves well.
And positioning is the right word, because that's exactly what I was referring to. And I made the comment earlier about treating talent as a different customer set. So just like you wouldn't go, you don't go to market with any product or service saying we'll be all things to all people. You determine, who is the right customer for you? What do they value most that aligns with what you can actually deliver? So, are you faster? Are you cheaper? Are you better? What is it about your unique value proposition to your customer? Who's going to value that? And then you go after that segment of the market. And that's the exact same thing that employers need to be doing, particularly to your point, smaller employers who can't just compete on pay. It's gotten very difficult to compete on pay. And so saying, what is it about us that's different or better? We have this issue, for example, we have our own proprietary software that runs our business. And so we have developers that work for us that are qualified to work for a company like Amazon. They could probably make more money working for Amazon. I hope they don't listen to this podcast. But what we offer, one, our location is in a location where people don't have to commute, to Amazon or be part of the big behemoth. They can see the end result of their work more quickly. They can own the full life cycle product. Like, we've gotten really clear about who is this the right job for, and it's not right for everybody, but for the person that it is right for, it's a really great job. And so that's the work that employers have to do right now, is to say, who would want this job, and how do we make it really clear to that person that this is the right job for them? And pay is not everything.
Well, speaking of paying, we got to pay some bills here. We got to take our second short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Jenifer Lambert, for our famous Plead the Fifth section of the show, we're going to take her into a high school gymnasium. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank.
Plead the Fifth is brought to you by our corporate sponsors: Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, the Kitsap Sun newspaper, BC Fitness Studio, and Upstart Group. Please visit our website at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm co-host Michelle Bomberger, here with Dan Wheaton, and our guest today is Jenifer Lambert with TERRA Staffing Group. We're going to kick off Plead the Fifth next.
Now, first of all, Jenifer, you made comment that you have hired Michelle and the fabulous Equinox Business Law. She will not be advising you whether to plead the fifth or not, because she's going to probably be the one answering the question.
I was counting on that.
Yeah, no, you can't. Michelle's off the clock on this one, so to speak. So she's on the other side. But again, we're going to have some fun with this. And I mentioned a high school gymnasium. Well, let's say that you have been asked to speak to a group of high school seniors about the future, what they could expect regarding work. What would you tell them?
I would tell them to come from a place of yes. Say yes to everything. So there's some horrible advice about just following your passion, and I'm all for passion, and it's exciting if you can find things that you're passionate about that also pay, that the world needs. That is the absolute sweet spot, but you're not going to find it until you say yes to a lot of things and figure out also what you don't want to do. I told my story earlier that I never would have thought that I would be so passionately in love with this business. I was pretty sure I was going to do something completely different. But I said yes, and I have found my passion for this business. Early on, especially, look at every opportunity to say yes, raise your hand, volunteer, do the extra thing. There's a lot of worry right now about am I getting back as much as I'm putting in? early on, put in more, do more than 50%. The opportunities will come, and then you'll have the opportunity to say no in the future to a lot of things. But early days, especially when you're building your career, be a yes.
So if you could know anything about yourself 5 years from now, what would you want to know?
I could know anything about myself 5 years from now, what would I know? Or I want to know. I would want to know that the things I'm doing now to extend my wellness actually paid off. That, I think, is my biggest frustration, right? You're always getting new advice on, are we intermittent fasting, or are we supposed to be eating? Can we eat the carbs? Can we do the things? It's supposed to be low intensity exercise or high intensity. I feel like I'm constantly chasing this, what is the secret to not just long life, but a good life? Like that's what I'm trying to maximize, is making sure that the time I have left is time I enjoy. And so I would love to know if what I'm doing today is 5 years from now gonna pay off. So I keep experimenting.
I think this is a good follow-up on that. I know you've listened to a couple of our podcasts, and I've been asking everybody about hobbies. You got to turn a hobby into a business. So we're kicking you out of TERRA Staffing Group. You got to go start a new business, and it's got to be on a hobby. What would that hobby be?
I have the answer to this. I saw it in the flesh this weekend. I am an absolute outdoor enthusiast. My best days are days when I'm outside in fresh air. I don't care if it's raining. I don't care. I'm outside. And this weekend, I took my niece on a hike here in Phoenix. She was down visiting, and we ran into an 84-year-old man who was at the top of this mountain, and he hikes that mountain every day and greets visitors that come up there. He takes their pictures. He finds out where they're from. He has an official vest, so he's like hired by the Park Service. He's not, he's not a creepy lurker. He actually has an official capacity, but he's meeting people from everywhere. He's hearing their stories. He's telling them about his passion for this particular mountain in this park. And like, that's what I want to do. So I'm not sure I want to go to the same park every day, but if I could find a way to connect people to nature, I love people. I love being outside. Something that intersected those two, that would be divine. I would thoroughly enjoy that.
That's awesome.
I love that. So I was going to ask a question about your leadership team, because I know you've got an exceptional leadership team, but I think this is actually more fun. So in business, maybe in life, who's always right? You or Greg?
Oh, so the Greg that she's referring to is my husband, and he's also a business partner. He's our CEO. I recruited him into the business, by the way. So he's my favorite recruit of all time. So who's always right, Greg or I? How do I answer that? He's right a lot. He's right a lot. I will passionately advocate for a viewpoint, and here's why I know he's right, because he listens to me. He seeks my input, he seeks my guidance, but at the end of the day, he's right a lot more than he's wrong. And so we joke about that on our executive team, because he will sometimes be the outlier on something. And, once again, he'll be proven that, yeah, that was the right move to make. And so we learned to, instead of resenting him being right, being grateful that we have somebody on our team who's willing to sometimes go against conventional wisdom, plant his flag, sometimes pretty hard, and take the tough stand, and more often than not, he's right.
And Dan, just to follow up on that, I've worked closely with Jenifer and her team, and you really do have an exceptional leadership team. Do you have a secret?
Well, do we have a secret? A lot of open communication, I would say, is the secret. We have a value and a culture of candor, and really frequent communication, regular communication. I mean, I know every Monday I have a meeting with this entire team, and we're accountable to one another in very, very visible ways. We collaborate. It's clear on who owns what decision, who speaks into, other people's decision-making. Just a lot of really intentional communication. And we've worked really hard on building those relationships. Relationships don't just happen naturally. And so we have been the beneficiary of some outside expertise and guidance to help us really think intentionally about how to make sure that we are healthy as a team. And our first priority as a group is to one another, to make sure that there's health on that team, because if that team's not healthy and functioning, it's going to have ripple effects throughout the organization. So we're tight. We embrace the beauty of conflict. We are unafraid of conflict, and we work through conflict. But we're a healthy, functional team of people. I'm really proud of that.
Great answer. I want to slide this question in, because I know we're coming up to the end. Your website, Jenifer, states that you constantly are learning new things from the companies you represent. What's the most unique staffing position that you filled?
The most unique staffing position that we filled. Oh, there's so many. Right now we just finished a project for waste management. Waste management is a big customer of ours, and all the good that you do sorting your trash and putting things in recycling bins, somebody else has to go behind you and sort all of that. And they just held a huge golf tournament down here in Phoenix, the Waste Management Open, which generates a massive amount of trash. And we have had for the past 2 weeks a large number of people sorting and sifting through that. That is one of the most unglamorous jobs that we staff. Fortunately, it pays very well. They are smart. They pay a premium to people for doing a very difficult task. But our jobs range from that low tech to very, very high tech roles, engineering roles, very specialized technology roles. That's the thing I love about what we do, is that there is every day I'm learning something new. Every day feels like a field trip. Yesterday, I was out meeting with a customer that manufactures ice cream products. That's fun, especially when they send you home with samples. That's super fun. But every day it's like kind of an episode of how it's made, and we get to see behind the scenes, and we get to interact with people who are all over the skill spectrum, who are looking to find a place where they can contribute their skills and they can do meaningful work. And to just be able to be a part of that is a pretty sweet position to be in. So our mission, we summarize in 4 words: success stories created daily. And our job is to really figure out how to just be part of orchestrating a success story for both our employer clients as well as our talent client.
Well, before Michelle asks you for contact information, I'm a golfer and I watch the Waste Management Open. It's crazy
a fun
there,
tournament.
Throwing stuff all, but that's a zero waste event,
That's right.
which is amazing, especially when you saw the 2 guys who made a hole in one, and the place was littered with bottles and beer, and all of that. But it was amazing that event, for as large as it is zero waste.
It's really impressive.
Well, Jenifer, thank you so much for being a guest here on the Shrimp Tank. It was just such a pleasure to hear more about your story. For our listeners who want to get in touch with you or learn more about TERRA, how can they get more information?
You can check us out on the web at terrastaffinggroup.com. I would encourage you to visit our employer resource section, and that's where you're going to find that staffing strategy assessment that I referred to. We also have a culture assessment, so you can assess your own corporate culture and you can see how strong is your culture. You'll also see a section for HR Hotspot, which is our monthly webcast program. And we always have another one coming right up, and our archives are there. We have amazing speakers and resources to offer there, including Michelle Baumberger has been a multiple time guest on that program. So I would encourage you to particularly look at that section. There's a lot of great free resources that any employer could benefit from. And if you would like to connect with me, you can send me an email, Jenifer with 1 N at terrastaffinggroup.com, or LinkedIn is also a great way to connect with me. I produce regular videos and other content that folks tell me they're enjoying and getting value from. So I'll keep producing it if you keep telling me. That's a great way to connect as well.
And I was going to plug your short videos as well. I find so much value in just the insights that you share on talent strategies. I really enjoy those. So
thank you.
For all of our listeners, make sure you check out the replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle, or wherever you get your podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and follow us on our show's social media pages on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
Well, Jenifer, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Really enjoyed it. Michelle, as always, great to see you. We'll be seeing you here again in the next, she's a regular on our show, obviously, as well. So looking forward to seeing Michelle again soon. Everybody else, do is exactly what Michelle said. Like us on our Facebook page, because that's where we live stream every Wednesday. Our next show will be Wednesday, March 2nd. Our guest will be Keith Sconiers with PaySuite. Keith is based out of Portland, so we'll be heading down I-5 a little bit to talk with Keith. Our co-host that week will be Linda Popke. In the meantime, please be safe, be well, and be prosperous. And if you're around where I am, stay warm, because until next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond.